Hello, my name is William Kumwembe and this is Business Time. It's a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And in the program today, we speak to the National Planning Commission on prospects to attaining the middle-income economy status by at least 2030. And also in the program, the Food and Agriculture Organization tips Malawi on revitalizing the agriculture sector. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. In our main story in the program today, Malawi aspires to become a lower middle income economy at least by 2030. That is about 7 years from now. However, to reach that mark, the country needs to be growing her economy in gross domestic product terms by at least 6%. Nonetheless, history has it that the past decade, Malawi has been growing her economy on average by about 4.5%. And the past 3 years, the country has been growing by slightly around 2.5% on average. Would Malawi be able to attain the aspiration which is embedded in the Malawi 2063 blueprint? This is a question we posed to National Planning Commission Director General Thomas Montali.
I think the drive is mixed bag. First, you will recall also that there's been a lot of exogenous shocks that have kept on hitting us left, right, and center, and the intensity has increased over time. But added to that, our capacity as a nation to deliver on a lot of the catalytic interventions has been a bit slow and largely lacking in terms of capacity. And so we are saying a lot of the capacity is required because we need to have the wealth with which to execute the Malawi 2063. And that will require that the state takes a very active role in the market. Creating of wealth would require the state, for instance, to make sure that our mining company is up and running. Our agriculture development corporation is fully commercialized with a full private sector coalition, as well as the former Malawi Development Corporation is up and running to trailblaze investments in this country. If we do not have wealth of our own and hoping that the private sector will come and invest, the challenge is the macroeconomic environment may not be conducive enough to some of them, and therefore government needs to de-risk by going in there in strong alliance with the private sector to make sure that we create this wealth at the shortest time possible. So if you ask me, one thing that I would really point out is that we need to move fast as a nation to implement this development philosophy of ours, and making sure also it's a call to ministries, department agencies and non-state actors that we don't have any other country other than this. And therefore, when we are given the tasks and mandates, let's execute to the best of our abilities so that we can meet the milestones at the shortest time possible. That's a good question. You see, that's why some of us keep on emphasizing the point of doing the right things. And one of those right things, as I mentioned, is if we go big scale in commercializing ADMAC, if we go big scale in the mining company, if we go big scale in having our own Malawi Development Corporation, the modeling that we did at the commission just with ADMAC, if we have ADMAC fully commercialized to aggregate produce, to agro-process and export, we'll be getting not less than $3 billion in a year. And if you talk about what we need, it's about 19 billion. Already now we're talking about $600 per capita. We just need a gap of 400. And that, if we do that huge mining scale, rutile is a very expensive thing. You put it on board, it's going to bring you within a couple of years a lot of resources, because the mining itself may not happen immediately. But what happens is that the processes that come with the mining, the investing, the resources, the dollars that flow in, and then you couple it up with whatever is already happening on the ground. This is very possible, but we have to continuously be doing the right things, as I've pointed out. I think also to mention is we should realize and be cognizant of the fact that when exogenous shocks hit, there is possibility that you can miss the target. But when you miss the target, it should not be too far. You should miss it narrowly because you are focusing your attention on doing the right things. But it will be a sad story if we are having exogenous shocks and also not doing the right things. That means the missing of the target will be very huge. So let's concentrate on doing the right things. As Malawians, I can tell you that if we focus on that, come 2030, it's very possible to do that. So one key expectation is that the media should work with us. As I mentioned in there, we need a strong alliance. Two things. First, the messaging should really be about promoting those initiatives that are scaling up inclusive wealth creation and self-reliance. Second is to hold each other accountable. Those that are staying on the way in us not meeting that aspiration should be questioned. And that is why the Commission will be sharing with you in a moment what are those catalytic interventions that if we put a lot of our energies on from this year onwards, we can begin to see a huge change. So it is you as media, one key expectation that we have is positive reporting. Let's report on those things that are doing well, so that we as a Commission, when we're engaging bilaterally or otherwise the state and non-state actors, we should be saying, hey, I think these are the things that we understand are really going places. We can't be everywhere, but the media is everywhere in Malawi. So you know what is happening best somewhere. And so let's form a strong alliance to promote those things and hold each other accountable.
Now, Malawi remains an agrarian economy despite input of the sector to the national gross domestic product dwindling each passing year. There is need for massive investment into the sector to revitalize it. This is according to the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO Deputy Director General Beth Bechado. She was speaking last week at a conference held in Blantyre. Our journalist Kumwembe Mangazi was there and caught up with the official and other officials from the government to find out what needs to be done.
So the farmer field schools have been in place since the late 1980s, over 30 years now. We've trained something on the order of about 10 to 20 million farmers worldwide. There's been an important program here in Malawi that has been in place for, I think, almost 20 years now. And these schools are an opportunity for us to make sure that farmers have opportunities to understand the most important aspects of sustainable agricultural production. It helps them with managing their farm businesses. It helps in giving more opportunities to women farmers, to next generation farmers, and it really also importantly lets them share with one another. And that's a very important aspect of ensuring that farmers are more productive and that they're more profitable. I'm so impressed by the progress that's been taking place here in Malawi. I've already had one opportunity earlier in my visit to see the Thuchari Research Laboratory, and we really got to see firsthand a lot of the work that's been done in making sure that really strong practices around banana production specifically have been brought to farmers. As we all know, the banana sector here in this country was really devastated by the banana bunchy top virus a number of years ago. There's continued competition from other banana producing countries in the region, and this is an outstanding product, an outstanding commodity for Malawian farmers to be able to not only grow here domestically, but I think ultimately to be able to export. But to do that, we need to make sure that we have the best planting material. We have to make sure that we have varieties that are disease resistant. We have to have good pest monitoring systems. And then we have to make sure that beyond the production aspects, that these farmer field schools also focus on best practices in processing, best practices in business management, best practices in marketing. These are all other important aspects that I think the schools here in Malawi have already demonstrated that they've been able to deliver. It's a great point. It always seems that for many of these most important and meaningful programs, we still never quite have enough resources and financial support to bring to bear. But the European Union funded Kulima project that really has farmer field schools at the center here in Malawi is an outstanding start. In fact, the EU has already put over $40 million into the Kulima project, which has farmer field schools, as I said, at the center. From an FAO perspective, just recently, it was a small amount of money, but we are putting sort of our regular programming budget to the test to really try to demonstrate that FAO is looking to find ways to not only to continue to support the operations of the Farmer Field School, but why we're here today and why we're here in Malawi at this global forum is to really begin to think about the future of the Farmer Field Schools. And so between FAO, our other partners, the private sector, donors like the EU, USAID, and other national governments, but also the government here in Malawi. I'm so thrilled that the Minister of Agriculture, Minister Cavalli, has been with us for the last 3 days, that the support that the national government is providing to farmer field schools and the extension services here in the country are prioritized, but we are going to have to dig deeper. We are going to have to mobilize some additional resources. But what I can also say, maybe on this last point, is that farmer field schools oftentimes don't need big amounts of money. We can do a lot with some very minimal resources that ultimately become more catalytic in what they are able to develop and to produce for farmers.
Remember, this is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. My name is William Kumwembe. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And my name is William Kumwembe. Moving on with the program, it's about 10 weeks since the opening of the 2023 tobacco selling season. Now, this far, both prices, revenue, as well as competitiveness on the market has indicated some positivity, evidenced by a growth in revenue to $193.8 million as at close of week 10, that's last Friday, from about $66.9 million during same time last year. Our journalist, Daunga Sabola, has been following trends on the market and has since filed this report.
This year's tobacco selling season started on April 12 and was officially opened by President Lazarus Chakwera in Lilongwe. As at last Friday, the market had run for about 10 weeks. According to figures from the Auction Holdings Limited, as at the end of the 10th week of the marketing season, a total of 73.8 million kilograms of barley had been sold at an average price of $2.23 per kilogram, from which $165 million has been realized this year. This compares to 27 million kilograms of barley tobacco, which had been sold at an average price of $1.94 per kilogram, which faced $53.1 million the same period last year. Cumulatively, about 84.2 million kilograms of all types of tobacco had been sold at the end of the 10th week at an average price of $2.30 per kilogram, from which the country has generated $193.8 million after 10 weeks. During a similar period last year, about 32.3 million kilograms of all types of tobacco had been sold at an average price of $2.07 per kilogram, which saw the country realizing about $66.9 million. And speaking when he opened the tobacco selling season, President Lazarus Chakwera urged buyers to ensure that they provide better prices for the crop, considering that farmers used expensive inputs. With the country requiring about $250 million for our imports for the whole month, the $193 million realized so far could be just enough to keep the country running for just over 20 days. With authorities estimating about 128 million kilograms of tobacco to be harvested this year, the country could be left with about 43 million kilograms to go through the market. At an average price of $2.30, the remaining tobacco could earn Malawi about $100 million.
Now, in other business news, National Investment Trust PLC has outlined an ambitious plan to broaden its scope in as far as investment in the country and beyond is concerned. This was said last week when the firm engaged a stakeholders conference in Blantyre. Justin Kwe was there and now reports.
NITL is one of the companies listed on the Malawi Stock Exchange whose market capitalization is at 44.5 billion kwacha. This comes from 135 million shares in issue being traded at 330 kwacha per share as of Tuesday this week. But the company has a dream. By 2027, it wants to have a market capitalization of 100 billion kwacha. The company's fund manager, Nico Assets Managers, believe this will be achieved through different strategies, which some include investing in other platforms aside from companies listed on the Malawi Stock Exchange. Nico Asset Managers Chief Investment Officer Daniel Dunga explains that for that to be achieved, they should be growing by 25% every year.
So if you look at a horizon of 5 years, it's not really like a plan or a strategy, it's what you would call a vision. This is what we are aspiring to do. And that's our long-term vision. And we are currently considering various strategies in terms of how we can get to that. But in summary, if we want to reach 100 billion in 2027, we have already calculated that we need to grow at a pace of 25% every year for the next 5 years. So one might ask a question, so how do you intend to grow at 25% every year for the next 5 years? It is by looking at the investment strategy. How can we unlock liquidity? Liquidity simply means how can we have a lot of money at our disposal such that any opportunity that comes to our table, we can quickly grab it. Secondly, what other investments that are non-traditional investments can we look at? Because largely, if you look at the current situation, which was in the presentation, you'll find that about 90% of our investments are on the Malawi Stock Exchange. Actually, it was at 100%. So we are looking at diversifying so that we have a bigger stake in the unlisted positions, because the listed positions are there, but they've always been there. We need to look at new opportunities for growth. All right, so it's the structure of the current portfolio. As you may have heard in the background, primarily this company was set up to invest on shares on the Malawi Stock Exchange. And the policy is that the dividends that come from those listed companies are the ones that create our own dividend pool. So if companies on the stock exchange have not declared sufficient dividend, it affects our dividend pool. I think what they said was not really that the dividends are tiny. What they said was that the percentage, comparatively, our percentage dividend yield is small. Now, it's a bit technical, but...
Meanwhile, the listed company expects its profits to jump to 11.5 billion kwacha for the half year ending June 30, 2023, from 1.5 billion kwacha during the same period last year. This is according to the company's trading statement. The company has attributed the growth of the profit to an improved performance of other listed companies on the Malawi Stock Exchange, which the company has invested in. Speaking on the sidelines of a stakeholder engagement in Blantyre, the company's board chairperson Esther Gondwe said their presence is heavily on the Malawi Stock Exchange. She added that the listed company expects performance to continue on the positive side as they are embarking on a journey to reach 100 billion kwacha market capitalization by 2027.
So NITL, as we heard in the presentation, started from a humble beginning, but we've seen it grow from strength to strength. So without actually giving numbers, but you actually see that we are a strong organization now, We've invested in counters that are performing well on the Malawi Stock Exchange. Our presence is heavily in the banking sector, but that also just shows how the market is all about. Our own concentration is about 65% in banking sector, but on the Malawi Stock Exchange, you also see that the banking sector is almost about 51% in the banking. So our story is a strong one. I am happy to report that we seem to have made good decisions in terms of what we are investing in, and that's the reason why today we are able to boast to have been performing very well. So going forward, obviously we will want to strengthen our positions in the existing portfolio, but as we also said, we also want to look at other areas, other investments. We have said we have invested mostly in the listed organizations, but lately we've also seen that the unlisted companies are also areas that we can tap into. We just talked about our investment that we made in the last year in Continental Holdings Limited. We want to pursue more of those. We also look at other opportunities that may come in, and like we said, we have a vibrant investment committee and investment managers who are always on the lookout and making sure that we take advantage of any opportunities that come through.
Minority Shareholders Association of Malawi General Secretary Frank Harawa expressed excitement at the profits, indicating that it will result in higher dividends for investors. He, however, expressed doubt if this will have a meaningful impact on the movement of the share price.
I think as shareholders, where we are now, we've got no problem with our company NITL, because we've seen at the capital gain from December to today, and you see it's one of the counters on the Malawi Stock Exchange which is supposed to be even very expensive. It's supposed to be maybe hovering around 500, 600, because it's just an investment vehicle, and we've seen that they've invested in good companies, NBS, Irovo, and so forth. So the possibilities of NITL being a good performing counter are very high. Maybe there are only 2 or 3 things that are maybe affecting that. So going to the issue of them investing in private companies, yes, it's a good idea, but at the same time, they have to be very careful, because private companies, their accounts are not really followed by as we do with the public company. So we would prefer that they remain more at the Malawi Stock Exchange, so that they are aware there's a board that is really accountable to the shareholders.
National Investment Trust NITL PLC is a listed company whose main agenda is to be a vehicle for investments into risky areas so that the public and other investments follow.
Well, that story also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. My name is William Kumwembe, but always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Stay safe and bye for now.